Running late, but sounding great. Welcome back, everybody, to Stop and Go F1 for this, our reaction to the Hungarian Grand Prix. As I said, we're running a little bit late here because I was out and about for the actual race, but I've come back, I've watched it all, and I'm ready to talk about it. Firstly, make sure you like and subscribe. Secondly, big shout out to all of our members, Dakota, Joyous James, and Robin Myers. If you want to become a member just like them, the link is in the description. Right. Let's get into this bloody race, because whilst I was out, I had one eye on the race, and I kind of knew what was happening. And, you know, before I started watching here, I kind of knew all the big major moments. I knew who won. I knew about the Verstappen-Hamilton incident. I knew about what was going on in McLaren. But I hadn't actually heard it. So when I sat down, I was quite excited to go, wow, there's a lot of drama going on here. I'm excited to watch this race. I want to see how it goes down. And having just finished it now, I'd love to sit here and go, wow, what a great dramatic race. But the feeling that I come away from that race is not one of happiness, like, at all. I don't think that was a good race. I think it was awful, because you come away from it, and despite the fact that Oscar Piastri has won, McLaren have lost. Nobody won here. I think the only driver who looks good on the podium is Lewis Hamilton. Out of the top 5, only Hamilton and Leclerc look good. Nobody truly won the Hungarian Grand Prix. In 2024, we have a field of losers. But we'll get into that and much more. Let's start at the start, everybody. Lando Norris is on pole position. Oscar Piastri alongside him. The only change to the grid is that Pierre Gasly has got a pit lane start. But then we go to lights out. And Oscar Piastri is able to take the lead into turn 1. It was free wide into turn 1. Lando Norris pushing Max Verstappen out wide off the track. Max goes off the track, comes back on, gains the advantage, and gets ahead of Lando Norris. He would have to give that position back later on. Nico Hülkenberg pits incredibly early on lap 3, and around about then is when Verstappen lets Norris go back through. Right thing to do, obviously. I think this became a bit of a bigger thing than it really was. That's what I got with a lot of this race, is I think there are certain things that are being portrayed as a lot bigger than they actually are, and there are other moments that maybe aren't being broadcasted to the same extent. So this whole thing of, Max didn't want to let Norris go through, I mean, you know, that if you look on Twitter, or whatever the hell it's called this week, that is being portrayed as this big thing of, Max was selfish and a crybaby and he didn't want to let Norris through. But it's just like, that is what every racing driver ever is. You know, every driver ever who gained an advantage, when they're told they have to give the place back, they don't go, okie dokie then, let's go! Hooray, team! They go, oh no, I don't agree with that, he pushed me off the track. Like, everyone does it, but because it's Max, there's the added thing of everyone wants him to kill himself, or whatever the hell the vendetta is this week. But yeah, I just got the whole thing that's been blown out of proportion. He let him through, move on. Right, then we get a few more pit stops. Albon, Magnussen and Ocon pit on lap 7. Incredibly good stop for Esteban Ocon, actually. 2.3 seconds. That got overlooked, but a good stop from Alpine. Lap later, in comes Alonso Ricardo. Now, Alonso is very frustrated. This is the first proper weekend where I've seen Alonso be frustrated with the Aston. Aston have got these big upgrades coming in for this weekend. It started in the practice session where he was told to find the balance of the car so they could compare the two cars, because he had the upgrades and Stroll didn't. I don't know if that was just for the practice session or the entire weekend. But yeah, they told him to find the balance, and he basically just laughed at them and said, good luck. Here, on lap 14, he comes on the radio and says that he's already lost the race with everyone. So Alonso giving up on the Hungarian Grand Prix, just 14 laps in. A few more pit stops now. Hamilton pits on lap 17, Norris is lap 18, Piastri is lap 19. Verstappen pits on lap 21, and then Crofty mentions that Max Verstappen was doing some sim racing last night and he didn't get a full night's sleep. Don't know if people were aware of that. But yeah, Crofty dropping a little fact for you there. Sainz pits on lap 21, Leclerc pits on lap 23, Perez pits on lap 29. Then we get Yuki, Hülkenberg and Albon on lap 30, which was the second pit stops for Hülkenberg and Albon. On lap 34, Max Verstappen is all over the back of Lewis Hamilton. Max definitely was much faster than Lewis here this weekend, but Lewis, through the strategy, was able to have that track position time and time again. And as we know, in Hungary, it's very difficult to overtake. So that track position is incredibly valuable. And I think that's why Max was so annoyed at the strategy, because it's a strategy that required him to have to continuously be on the offense rather than be on the defense. Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly retires the car. Hydraulic leak is the reason given, which makes him the second race in a row now that Gasly has had a DNF. That was not his fault at all. Now we go back to Hamilton and Verstappen. Hamilton locks up going into turn 1. This allows Max Verstappen to get alongside him with a DRS into turn 2. He gets past, but then goes wide, which allows Hamilton to go right back into the position. Fantastic racing from the both of them at this point in the race. Hamilton's called to the pits, but then stays out. Meanwhile, whilst this battle is happening, Leclerc is gaining all the time onto the back of these two guys. Then Crofty mentions here that Max Verstappen's been doing some sim racing last night with his sim team, so he hasn't had a full night's sleep. Nice little tidbit there from Crofty to mention that. Meanwhile, Hamilton and Leclerc both pit on lap 41. Norris pits on lap 45, and this is where the controversy all starts. So they're saying that he's pitting on lap 45 in order to cover Hamilton, who was pit. When Norris comes out, he is 4.8 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Now, obviously, if they'd left it longer and longer and longer, that gap closes down. But Hamilton's not gaining nearly 5 seconds in, one or two laps. He wasn't going a second quicker than Norris was. So here is the point which starts all of these dominoes for the rest of the race. And quite frankly, it was ridiculous, because Piastri pits on lap 47. And he comes out behind Lando Norris, but he's been told, don't worry, we'll swap the cars back round again, because Piastri was leading. Why not just pit Piastri on lap 45 and then have Norris come in on 46 or 47? The pace Hamilton was carrying was not that much that they would actually have to worry about him. And you see, we discussed this a little bit in Silverstone, and we'll discuss it more as we get onto here. But McLaren, as they run right now in terms of strategy, in terms of dealing with two top drivers, are not ready to be at the front of the field. We'll discuss it more later on. I'll make more points. So on lap 48, Norris is told to give up the place at his convenience. It turns out his convenience will not be for another however many laps. I don't even know how many laps it was. Another 20 laps, I think, maybe 19 laps. Max Verstappen pits on lap 50. He's on the radio. He's not happy at all with the strategy or with the car. Things just not going his way today. And then Crofty gives us a little bit of information here. Crofty tells us that Max Verstappen has been doing a sim race last night, and he hasn't had much sleep. So that was a nice little piece of information there from Crofty about Max Verstappen's personal life. Max Verstappen passes Charles Leclerc for P4 on lap 57, and then back to Lando Norris on lap 60, and this is when it gets a bit ugly for me. I didn't like this, but McLaren resort to emotional blackmail in order to get Norris to do the team order, stating, remember every Sunday morning meeting. So basically saying, if you don't do this, every Sunday morning meeting we will have from now until the end of time, everyone's going to hate you. Which isn't the nicest thing to say. We'll talk more about it in a little second. Verstappen is now back on the back of Hamilton again. This is lap 62, but on lap 63 is when the big action happens. Verstappen goes for a huge dive bomb, carries far too much speed into it, locks up the tyres in a big way. Lewis Hamilton is turning for the corner, he just keeps on turning and hits the back of Verstappen's car. Verstappen flies up through the air, lands back down, is able to keep the car going. Probably had some kind of damage, but doesn't seem to be phasing him that much. He does lose a place to Leclerc at that point. Because I'm recording this late, I can say that the stewards have said it was a racing incident. Personally, I feel it was more Max than Lewis. Probably like 75, 80, 85% Max. A large majority. I do think that Lewis possibly could have either moved or slowed down. Either way, Max isn't making that corner and Lewis is keeping the position. I think in the steward's note they did say that Lewis could have made more of an effort to avoid the collision, but overall it was a racing incident. But yeah, I mean, I think, with that kind of thing, I know you're supposed to be giving out penalties for the incident, not the effects, but it was Max's fault and Max actually lost stuff from it. So realistically, adding a penalty on top of that, I don't think is needed. But there you go. Anyway, he loses the place to Leclerc. Now some more emotional blackmail here for Lando Norris, who's told you'll need Oscar and you'll need the team if you want to win a championship. That's on lap 66. On lap 68, 2 laps later, Lando Norris slows down and lets Piastri pass for the lead. Yeah, let's just skip to the end here. Oscar Piastri wins his first ever win with Lando Norris in P2, Lewis Hamilton in P3, Lewis Hamilton's 200th podium. Congratulations to Lewis. Unbelievable stat. Just absolutely mental. But let's talk about McLaren, because no one wins here at all. This is dreadful. So let's talk about Piastri first. This is Oscar Piastri's first ever win. And it is ruined. You only get your first ever win once. And, we look at all the greats, and even the modern drivers, their first ever wins, we'll look forever at that Lando Norris one in Miami and the fantastic feeling that was around there. Max Verstappen's legendary win for Spain 2016, that incredible race where he won there, that's talked about for years, Lewis Hamilton in Canada 2007. You have all these huge wins that we talk about time and time and time again. And Oscar Piastri's will be spoken about for a long time to come. But it won't be spoken about in a way of, wow, Piastri did it. Because I've already seen it online. People feel like this win was handed to him. Despite, taking the lead into turn one. Despite leading the first half of the race by himself. Despite building a good gap off over Lando at the start. People see this and go, he was handed this win. So despite the fact that your driver has now won a race, Piastri's stock, in the eyes of the mainstream fan, has been devalued. And I think, luckily, they have a driver like Piastri who doesn't seem to be fazed by anything. So Piastri's confidence is probably fine, but the way people look at him is now different. So he has been hurt by winning a race. Then you have Lando Norris, who will be massively demotivated now. We know what Lando Norris is like. We've seen him race for years now, and he has said publicly about how much he is affected by bad results, by what people say about him, by how people treat him, by how he thinks people think about him. We know how in his own head he gets about that kind of thing. And what we witnessed today was his own team bullying him lap after lap after lap for something that wasn't his fault but was theirs. McLaren made a strategy error, which was making Lando come in before Piastri and having that undercut. And then from there, they went, we're all going to hate you if you win this race. Everyone will hate you forever. The whole team will hate you. Oscar will hate you. Everyone who's watching is going to hate you. And Lando's just like, I've done nothing wrong. I'm here to win this race. I'm just doing my job. So Norris, knowing how Norris works, that will devalue him as well. Because I think this will be a knock of his confidence here. And this will be something that will stay with him for a hell of a long time. And then we have McLaren as a team. Because despite the fact that McLaren not only won, but took their first 1-2 in 3 years here today, they lost. Because they look like idiots again. So, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago in Silverstone, where they didn't do the double stop for Piastri and screwed him over massively. Mercedes did the double stop, they didn't. Piastri was just out of it from there. Here we have another thing here, where they've made the wrong call in the pits. They've done it wrong. They've tried to correct their mistake. They've done it in the end. But the way people look at them now has changed. They are a team that is not prepared to be at the front. They have the fastest car. They have 2 great drivers. But the internal team itself is not ready. Especially not ready to have 2 top drivers. If they had Lando Norris and a second driver who wasn't very good, they'd be going, wow, McLaren have done it. Great stuff. But having 2 drivers who are really good is very, very difficult to handle. That's why so many teams don't do it. That's why we see teams like, a Schumacher Barrichello. We see teams like a Hamilton Bottas. We see teams like a Verstappen Perez, where there is a clear deficit between the top driver and the second driver. I mean, the most famous incident of it not being that way is McLaren, Senna and Prost. And we saw what happened there. Explosions. And McLaren here have gone again. We've got a top driver in Lando Norris, but we're going to bring in another great driver in Oscar Piastri. Now, I'm not saying they're anywhere near the levels of Senna and Prost, because they're nowhere near the levels of Senna and Prost. But they're 2 top drivers with egos who want to win. And they can win, and they're being denied here because it's hard to run a team like that. And McLaren aren't ready to run a team like that because they don't know what they're doing. They've had it their way for so many years that Lando is a top driver, Ricciardo wasn't good enough in that McLaren team. The car didn't suit him, his confidence was knocked. Whatever you want to say about Ricciardo, he was not on the same level as Lando Norris during those McLaren years, so Lando was the priority. That's understandable. Last year, when it was Oscar's rookie season, Lando was the priority, even in races when he shouldn't have been. It still made sense. Oscar was a rookie. Here, we have Oscar in his second year, leading the race. Lando should not be the priority. It should be winning the race with the guy in front. It's just infuriating that this team can't see past the way they've been working for so many years to be the best team they can be. Because not only have they messed this up in terms of what went on there, but we as fans have been denied because we don't get to see a battle for the lead. We have 2 great drivers in great cars who could have fought for the lead here, and we didn't get to see it because McLaren messed it up. So, like I said at the start, I wanted to come here and say, what a great race, look at all the drama, but I can't, because the race wasn't good. The race was McLaren messing it up again, and then bullying their top driver for 20 laps until he gives in. It was embarrassing from everyone involved. Awful way to take your first win. I can't believe it. I'm ranting now. But I think I've said what I wanted to say. Let's just run through the order. So yeah, Oscar Piastri, first win. Congratulations. Fantastic job. Lando Norris, P2. Still a great position there. Still getting good points on Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton in third place. Once again, 200th podium, which as a stat is mental. I think Schumacher's in second place with 155. So, to have 45 more podiums than Michael Schumacher does is mad. So yeah, Lewis Hamilton, incredible yet again. Leclerc, fantastic job for a P4 there. Max Verstappen in P5. The real Max was just infuriated today. Came out of the box just angry. He had the pace. I think he was the third fastest driver. I'd say for sure. I mean, realistically, in an actual race, he might have been there. If Piastri and Norris are allowed to fight each other, and Max hadn't made that mistake, who knows? Maybe he is fighting for P2, P1, but realistically, he should have been P3 today. What I've written down here is he had the pace, but not the patience. There you go. That's my little line on Max Verstappen. But also, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Crofty mentioned this in the race. He was doing some sim racing last night, and he was up until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so he didn't get a full night's sleep. Nice little bit of information there from Crofty on Max Verstappen. I'm really glad he mentioned it every 5 seconds. Sainz was in P6, so that's a decent result for the Ferrari. Perez in 7th, Russell in 8th. Some good recoveries from some awful qualifying results yesterday. Yuki in 9th gets some good points for RB. Stroll in 10th is the last of the points finishers. Alonso 11th, Ricciardo 12th, Hülkenberg 13th, Albon 14th, Magnussen 15th, Bottas 16th, Sargent is in 17th, Ocon 18th, Zhou 19th, Gasly the only DNF of the race. There is the abysmal Hungarian Grand Prix of depression and death. So, let me know what you think in the comments down below. We're back tomorrow for all things driver racing, so look forward to seeing you there. And then we're back next week for the last race before the summer break, the Belgian Grand Prix. Looking forward to that one. I will see you there. Until next time, though, have a good one. Goodbye.